Twin brothers' lies destroyed my life. My parents kicked me out, and now after years of neglect, they're asking for my money. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. Growing up, my twin brother and I had quite different treatment from our parents. For some reason, my parents were certain that my brother was destined for greatness, whereas I was labeled the black sheep since I was more interested in sports and making friends than in studying. They continually compared us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-esteem from an early age. As a child, I had to watch my brother have elaborate birthday parties for his pals, while I was treated as an afterthought. He frequently had sleepovers with his pals, whereas I was never allowed to bring my friends home. To be honest, I dreaded every moment of my youth. My grandma was the only person in the family who seemed to care about me. When she came, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few bucks to treat myself later. As the years went, this overt preference for my twin brother evolved into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly insult my academics and activities. No matter how hard I tried, I could never satisfy their expectations of being the ideal child. Although I excelled at athletics, they forbade me from participating in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to concentrate completely on my education, just like my brother. As a child, I felt frustrated and helpless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded again, this time for using Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong, but like all teenagers, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. However, my parents considered this as a major crime and a violation of trust because they had barred me from talking with my pals. They went crazy, flung all of my belongings around the room, ripped the doors from their hinges, and informed me I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents attack me in this way, my identical brother, rather than sticking up for me, made things worse. Our parents' wrongful acts produced a toxic environment, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. He developed a habit of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he'd easily transfer the blame onto me, and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me, happily accepted his falsehoods. He would insult me in front of my schoolmates and mock my attractiveness. Despite this, I had a large circle of friends at school because I was personable and willing to connect. My twin, on the other hand, suffered socially and disliked the fact that I could interact with others while he, as an introvert, felt uncomfortable. This jealousy boiled over during our 14th birthday party, when none of his buddies came up. I'm not sure why they did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends treated me to ice cream, and I had a fantastic day. This irritated my brother even more. To get retribution, my brother started spreading false tales about me at school, depicting me as a spoiled brat. He falsely accused me of physically assaulting him at home since our parents loved him more. He escalated the situation without my knowledge. To fake proof, he would punch himself, causing injuries such as a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would boldly stroll into school, exhibiting his self-inflicted injuries as proof of my alleged assault and fabricating stories. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, claiming that they were the result of innocent activities such as playing football with friends. The lies and his supposed black eyes gained traction, and many began to believe his twisted account of events. It didn't take long for whispers to spread, and my friends began to look at me suspiciously. At first, I noticed minor changes. Friends who used to converse with me in the halls seemed distant, and invites to group hangouts grew fewer and farther between. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and people were unwilling to engage with the allegedly pampered girl charged with violence. One day, I got the confidence to ask my ex-best friend what had happened between us. She said that my twin brother had been circulating falsehoods about me. She disclosed the specifics of the lies he had told everyone, accusing me of actions I had never committed. I was stunned to hear her remarks. The emotion was a combination of incredulity and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, whom I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. It was a betrayal that struck deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a sorrowful heart. I addressed my brother the following day at school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he smirked and said I deserved to die alone. I was at a loss for words since his lies and actions were beginning to frighten me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was frightened they would believe my brother instead of me. Isolation stung, especially since I had always been open to establishing friends. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies seemed to be breaking apart the bonds I'd made over the years. The rumors spread among teachers as well. It was a weird sensation, as if I were living in a parallel realm where my genuine self was obscured by the wicked fiction told by my own twin. The lies had progressed beyond typical teenage chatter. They were now influencing how others regarded me. The unpleasant whispers swiftly reached my principal's ears, and my worst nightmare became reality. The principal summoned me and my brother, along with our parents, to his office to discuss the purported rumors. I sat there, my heart racing, as the principal demanded the truth. I believed my brother would finally come clean, but he doubled down on his lies. He told the principal that the reports were real and depicted me as a bully who beat him up when our parents were not around. I could not believe it. Shock rushed over me as my brother continued to tell this twisted story about how I was furious at him for receiving more attention from our parents. He held to his story like a glue, despite the fact that it was all lies. After hearing my brother's story, my mother burst into tears and clutched him like he was a hero. My father tried to console my brother, assuring him that it was brave of him to speak up and that he would ensure that nothing bad happened to him. Following that day, I attempted to defend myself, arguing with the principal that everything was fabricated. I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to get to the top, but my brother persisted, saying that I was this furious, violent person who took out my emotions on him every day. My mother's tears flowed as she grabbed onto my brother and gave me accusing stares. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's fabricated story. My principal sharply chastised me, stating that the school did not accept bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't simply let it go. I implored him, tears flowing down my cheeks, attempting to explain that I hadn't done anything to my brother. The principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would not bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I began crying even more, virtually asking him to reconsider. My parents, outraged and embarrassed by the incident, hauled me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to argue my case and make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, my heart full of frustration and embarrassment. When we came home, things changed drastically. My father started packing my belongings out of the blue. I was stunned, perplexed, and had no idea what was going on. My mother asked him what he was doing, but he simply yelled that he couldn't allow me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, virtually on my knees, and begged my brother to give them the truth, but he remained cool, unmoved by my feelings. My father kept packing my belongings before throwing the bag into our foyer. I clung to my father's legs, asking him not to kick me away. It felt as if a nightmare were happening. He informed me that a bully like me did not deserve to reside in his home and that he would call his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wished. It felt as if the world had collapsed beneath me. I stood there in amazement, surrounded by my stuff scattered over the foyer, booted out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother showed up. She helped me grab all of my belongings and load them into the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I was wearing my seatbelt before strolling towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my father opened it, she began yelling at him for treating me this way. With firm determination, she informed him that if he ever approached or attempted to contact me again, she would not hesitate to call the police or CPS, because what he had done to a youngster like me might land him in jail. My mother attempted to shift blame by telling her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother was having none of it. She stood firm, defending me and emphasized that I was only a child and did not deserve to be treated in such a harsh manner. That was the first time I realized how powerful my grandmother was. She did not cower before my parents, and unlike them, she trusted me. We eventually drove away, leaving behind my house, the only place I had ever grown up. I can't even begin to describe how excruciatingly painful I felt at the time. I recall crying on the bed and refusing to eat anything, despite my grandmother's insistence. When I informed her what my brother had done, she was astonished as well. She told me that she trusted my version of the story, and I was relieved that I had at least one person on my side. When the 10-day suspension was removed, returning to school was like going back into the lion's lair. As I entered the familiar hallways, my classmates' expressions told volumes. Judgment, murmurs, and sidelong stares. The weight of the bogus charges remained in the air. Meanwhile, my brother shamelessly ignored me and like I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few people who believed his version of the tale and saw him as the victim of my attacks. I tried to tell everyone my side of the tale, but it went unheard. I was an outsider, saddled with an unfair reputation that stuck to me like a shadow. No matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, or the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with contempt and suspicion. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all of my lessons, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then return home. I didn't have any friends, and it seemed like no one wanted me there. Throughout this, my parents never called to check on me. My grandmother would continuously remind me that this was not my fault and that things would eventually be fine. I graduated from high school with good grades and was looking forward to attending college, where I hoped to have a better life. It wasn't until I went away to college that I discovered what freedom felt like. For the first time, no one was looking over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to compete with me. I met and became friends with folks who shared my interests. Despite the mental and physical scars left by my family and classmates over the years, I focused on putting it all behind me and making the most of my college experience. During this period, I realized I had an aptitude for content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would work out in the long run. As a result, I chose to give up on my dream. However, in order to supplement my income, I began working as a freelance writer. I signed up for several freelancing websites, which helped me get tasks from well-known companies. This is how I progressively began to compile a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained my side hustle and never asked my parents for a penny. When I finished college, instead of taking a corporate job, I realized I could work full-time as a content writer. I was doing well since I had numerous clients and long-term professional ties with them, allowing me to work on multiple projects. Having a respectable freelancing business not only gave me financial independence, but it also enabled me to explore the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even if it was not easy. I saved as much money as I could and took a gamble on myself. I've seen a lot of the world over the years, but there's always so much more to see. My grandma was the only person I considered family throughout all of this, and I cherished her. She was quite unhappy when I moved out, but she knew that I needed to be self-sufficient. Despite my tight schedule, I made it a point to be available for her whenever possible. On weekends, I would pay Mom a visit, frequently eating meals or simply sitting on the porch, absorbed in chats about everything from childhood memories to current events. On weekends, I would spend full days assisting her with household tasks or taking her to the neighboring park for a leisurely walk. I recently completed one of the most important assignments of my career. While I can't reveal the name, I was extraordinarily fortunate to write articles and product descriptions for them. After the job was completed, I asked the team I worked with to submit grade evaluations on my websites, which they were delighted to do. I grabbed screenshots of several of their evaluations and shared them on Instagram, understanding that collaborating with this brand was a big deal. As expected, several other content writers congratulated me on my professional accomplishments, and some even reprinted my article to help get the word out. This is how I began receiving messages from strangers who also wanted assistance with their websites. My family observed this as well, and some contacted me to express their congratulations. My college's principal eventually called me, seeing that I was doing well and inviting me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about starting a career as a content writer. I was apprehensive because I'm not good at public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and consented. When I found myself standing in front of expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt as if my life had gone full circle. In my speech, I discussed my hardships and how I pushed hard to keep going despite the difficult times. It was a truly rewarding experience to encourage others and contribute to the growth of the writing community. Some of my videos went viral on Facebook as people connected with them. It felt fantastic to be finally recognized for my efforts. Last week, I was asked to talk on a local news program. It was a show about the benefits of content creation, and they asked me to share my experiences and insights with their audience. I was nervous, but yet excited about the prospect. During the event, I discussed my experiences, the value of customer feedback, and how a simple appreciation message may lead to fantastic opportunities. The opportunity to reach a larger audience and encourage more professionals in the area was both humbling and exciting. When it finally aired, I uploaded some of these snippets on Instagram since I was honored to be invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins first learned about my professional accomplishments. Because my parents never mentioned me to anyone, they had no idea I was working with well-known brands and appearing on television shows. This is how word swiftly went among my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears, because just a few days later, I was working on another project while keeping my phone on mute. When I finished my work, I checked my phone and was surprised to find 6 missed calls from my mother. I was astonished to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she had phoned me. After so many years of stillness, I couldn't understand why she was phoning. I hesitantly called her back, and she answered right away. I asked her if everything was fine, and my mother began to congratulate me. My father, who was most likely sitting directly next to her, also joined in on the chat. He began to probe about my life and well-being, and I responded without much thinking. It didn't strike me as weird until they asked how much I was making these days. I explained that it was none of their business. My father answered, "We're family, so don't be shy about telling us your income." I assured him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mother proceeded to describe how difficult their life was these days, and my brow furrowed in suspicion. Basically, this is how our talk went. "Mom, we're retired now, and we've wanted to renovate the house for a while. It's not in great shape, but we don't have any funds left." Me, "Okay." Mom said, "Your achievement has given us hope. We saw your TV interview today and thought you might be able to assist us out by paying for the improvements. Dad, after all, we are a family. Please do not hesitate to share some of your revenue with us. We genuinely need your help." Me, "Are you kidding me? Why are you asking for money when you haven't even spoken to me in years? I'm not sure what prompted you to contact me, and while I appreciate your congratulations, I won't be able to assist you." Hearing this, my mother began telling me that I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My father emphasized that as my parents, they deserved to be cared for, and that this was the least I could do. I was so angry at this point that I wanted to tell them off. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of simply disagreeing with them, I would teach them a lesson once and for all for thinking they could mooch off of me. After my parents mistreated me for so many years, I told them that I was willing to help them provided they agreed to my demands. My father was curious and asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I made my demand. If they wanted my assistance, they had to openly confess, in front of our family and friends, that my brother was the mastermind behind the false stories that had harmed my reputation. I wanted them to embarrass my brother in front of everyone, just like they had humiliated me by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to accept responsibility for their acts and recognize the anguish they had caused. Hearing about my untenable state, my father began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mother told me that this was all unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without engaging others, but I stood firm. This was a non-negotiable requirement for any further aid they wanted me to provide. As the tension rose, my father raised his voice, establishing his authority as my father, and began to underline that it was my responsibility to assist my family in need. My mother, in a last-ditch effort, persuaded me to do the right thing and assist them, citing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden attractiveness. I reminded them of the past, that they had kicked me out, and that my grandmother, not them, had reared me. They became increasingly angry, but I told them unequivocally that if they wanted to approach me and request financial aid, the truth had to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother had to face the consequences of his conduct. Since this talk, my parents have been calling me often, but I'm ignoring them. I'm beginning to regret even phoning them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd be a complete idiot if I didn't aid my parents. Update. It's been a crazy week since I last shared my story, and the outpouring of support and encouragement has been astounding. It's encouraging to know that I'm not alone at this moment. I'm happy everyone believes that I shouldn't interact with my parents or even contemplate assisting them after everything they've put me through. I gave them such a requirement since I knew they would be unable to comply. I know they love my brother too much, and even if they've realized by now that it was all his lies, I know they'll never put him through what they did to me. My brother sent me a nasty text message today after my parents tried to call me again and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. "Hey sis, I haven't seen you in a long time, and I can tell you that every day without you has been wonderful. I heard mom and dad contacted you and you offered them a strange ultimatum. You're aware that they will never go through with it, right? They plainly never loved you and will never hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time, so stop being so self-centered and attempt to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless, so why not help them out by paying for their home repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and become a better daughter." Seeing the message felt like a stab in the chest. The hubris to reject the difficulties I had encountered and the conditions I had established revealed his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my single and childless situation added an extra degree of insensitivity. His idea that I should prioritize their needs over my own was not only disrespectful, but also demonstrated how little he valued me. Fueled by dissatisfaction and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives, detailing the traumatic events of my upbringing and the unfair treatment I had received while growing up in my family home. In the email, I highlighted the tight and restrictive environment I encountered at home, as well as how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. I also looked into the spiteful and utterly false rumor my brother had circulated about me at school, which had resulted in serious consequences and ruined my image. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out, and if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I could have died on the streets by now. Toward the conclusion, I requested that everyone read a message my brother had sent me. I've enclosed a screenshot in which he acknowledged lying about me. It was a simple confession, and I hoped it would reveal the lies that had lasted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know what will happen when my parents and brother see it. Next, I'll let you know how my family reacts to my email. Update. It's been a month since my previous update, and a lot has happened. As you may guess, my family erupted when they received the email. My parents have faced criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of their favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members contacted me, saying they had no idea about everything and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and dad sent me a bombardment of text messages that became increasingly hostile and aggressive. So I contacted a lawyer, who issued them a cease and desist notice. It basically told them not to approach me again, and if they did, they would face severe legal penalties. I guess this spooked them since they stopped calling me. My grandmother believes I did the right thing by telling everyone what occurred, and she fully supports me. She is the only person who is important to me, therefore I'm delighted she has my back. Update. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I'm pleased to say that everything is going well in my life right now. Professionally, my article writing business has thrived. Invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts continue to come in, confirming my status as a renowned expert in my field. I'm as close to my granny as ever. I recently took a 1-week sabbatical from work to spend quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and has taught me a lot about the many flowers and herbs in her yard. My favorite and most cherished memories are of spending time with her, whether we were sharing meals, having profound conversations, or simply enjoying one another's company. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm glad they're staying away. Personally, I've started attending to therapy in the hopes of working on my own recovery. For the time being, I believe this is the final update. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.